She was labeled a lazy bride to humiliate the cowboy, but raised his ranch with bare hands. The twin suns were setting over the horizon of Draxon 9, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. Dust swirled across the dry plains of the colony, and hover wagons kicked up shimmering particles that glowed faintly under the fading light. In the center of this dusty town, a saloon with wooden walls and glowing neon signs hummed quietly, a rare oasis in a rough frontier world. Jace Mallory, the self-made millionaire cowboy of Draxon 9, leaned against the railing of his hover wagon, surveying the scene with a confident grin. His black hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but there was no mistaking his pride. He had everything a man could want: wealth, respect, and power over the people in his town. But tonight, he thought, he would acquire something more: a bride. The colony had recently started a legal program allowing settlers to purchase a partner for companionship and settlement purposes. Jace, who prided himself on his business sense, had chosen carefully. According to the records, she was supposed to be compliant, timid, and perfect in every way. Her name was Celine. The wagon carrying her approached the saloon slowly, hovering over the rocky terrain. Jace's heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but anticipation. He imagined her stepping out, shy and graceful, her head low, ready to be molded by his expectations. He barely noticed the strange hum in the air or the way the sunlight glinted off her small, intricate gadgets hidden in her bracelets and hairpins. The doors of the wagon hissed open, and Celine stepped out. She was taller than he expected, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her long coat flowed behind her, and every movement was deliberate, confident. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look scared. Jace straightened his hat and gave her what he thought was a charming smile. "You must be Celine," he said, his voice firm. "Welcome to Draxon 9. Celine studied him for a moment, a faint smile touching her lips. "I am," she said softly, but with a tone that made it clear she would not be easily directed. "And you must be Jace Mallory." The recognition in his eyes was obvious. She knew exactly who he was, but there was no awe, no fear. That made Jace's smile falter just slightly. "I expected someone different," he said, choosing his words carefully. "Not that you're unsuitable. Just different." Celine tilted her head, her eyes glinting with amusement. "Different isn't always bad," she said. "Sometimes it's necessary." Jace blinked. He had not expected a response like that. Most brides, he assumed, would simply nod and accept his authority. But Celine, she spoke as if she were already on equal ground. And that unsettled him. The walk to his quarters in the saloon was tense but polite. Jace tried to start small talk, asking about her journey, the wagon, the colony she came from. Celine answered, but always with a subtle hint of wit, a clever remark that made him stop mid-sentence. She was sharp, aware, and unafraid to challenge him, yet in a quiet, non-confrontational way. By the time they reached his quarters, a spacious room filled with a mix of rustic wood and futuristic tech, Jace was trying to maintain his usual composure. He thought he had seen confident women before, but Celine carried herself with a presence that seemed unshakable. "Your room is prepared," Jace said, gesturing to the doorway. He expected her to nod, to say thank you, maybe blush. Instead, Celine examined the room, her eyes scanning the corners as if reading hidden codes. "This is adequate," she said, then paused, looking at him. "But not optimized? The air circulation could be improved, and the lighting over there," she pointed at a corner, "creates glare on the work surfaces. Small things, but they matter." Jace opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had never been corrected by anyone in his life. Never. And certainly not by someone he thought would be submissive. Celine, noticing his hesitation, smiled faintly. "I like to understand my environment. It helps me adapt." Jace nodded slowly, trying to mask the surprise that threatened to show on his face. "Of course," he said finally. "Of course." Adaptation is... Dinner that night was quiet. Jace had ordered a traditional frontier meal, expecting Celine to eat politely, compliment him, and remain unobtrusive. Instead, she asked questions about the colony's energy grids, the mining operations, and the strange glow she had noticed outside the saloon. Jace tried to answer, feeling more like a tour guide than a master of his domain. The more she spoke, the more he realized she was already thinking 3 steps ahead, analyzing, planning, and observing everything. By the time they finished eating, Jace felt a strange mix of admiration and frustration. Celine wasn't just a partner for companionship. She was a force of her own, and that force did not bend easily. As night fell, the twin moons of Draxon, 9 rose over the horizon, casting a silvery light over the desert. Jace led Celine to his private quarters, expecting the customary formalities. He had prepared himself for shyness, for compliance, for a predictable first night. Celine, however, had other plans. She walked into the room, her movements smooth and deliberate. She began inspecting the security panels, checking the windows and calibrating the lights. Jace watched, frozen, as she rearranged small objects, adjusted the temperature, and even interfaced with a small terminal near the bed that controlled the room's environmental systems. "I like to be comfortable," she said, not as a request but as a statement of fact, "and I like to know the place I'm in is secure." Jace swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, to assert himself, but the words caught in his throat. This was not what he had expected. He had imagined a quiet, compliant bride, someone who would follow his lead. But Celine was already leading, subtly, but undeniably. He tried to sit, trying to regain control of the moment. You don't need to do all this," he said. Celine glanced at him, her eyes sharp and clear. "I like to do things properly. If you are uncomfortable with that, you need to adapt, just as I do." For the first time in his life, Jace felt uncertain. He realized that his wealth, his status, and his reputation meant nothing in front of someone who operated with her own intelligence and confidence. Selena wasn't going to follow him. She was going to challenge him, and he didn't know how to respond. The hours passed with quiet conversation, more like a meeting of minds than a traditional courtship. Jace found himself intrigued, fascinated even, by her perspective. She spoke about the frontier world with insight and vision, pointing out flaws and opportunities alike. He began to see her not as a property to be controlled, but as a partner in a harsh, unpredictable world. By the time the first night drew to a close, Jace was left with one undeniable truth. Celine was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was clever, capable, and confident, and he was frozen, unsure of how to proceed. As she finally settled into her room, Jace watched from the doorway, feeling a mix of admiration, fear, and respect. The future he had imagined, one of control and predictability, was gone. Celine had taken charge, quietly, decisively, and without confrontation. And Jace Mallory, the proud cowboy of Doxon, 9, realized that this was only the beginning. Outside, the winds of the desert planet whispered through the canyons, carrying the promise of change, challenge, and unexpected adventures. And inside the quiet quarters of the saloon, a new partnership, one built on respect, intelligence, and strength, was quietly beginning. The night on Daxon 9 was quiet but not peaceful. Outside, the twin moons reflected off the jagged rocks and hover tracks, casting long, strange shadows across the desert plains. Inside Jace Mallory's private quarters, the lights flickered faintly, controlled by the automated systems Celine had already examined. Jace leaned against the doorway, watching her. She was moving with calm precision, checking every panel, testing the environmental sensors, and adjusting the room's security settings. Every movement was deliberate, efficient, and confident. He expected a quiet first night, perhaps a conversation with polite smiles and shallow reassurances. But Selena had other plans. "You really don't have to do all this," Jace said, his voice steady but betraying a hint of surprise. Celine paused, one hand on a small console projecting a holographic map of the colony's energy grid. "I know," she said softly, "but I like to know the space I am in. Safety matters, comfort matters. I'm not asking permission. I'm making sure things work." Jace blinked. He had never been corrected so calmly, so firmly. Most people in his life would have accepted his words without question. Celine did not, and that unsettled him. "You take charge quickly," he said, trying to sound confident, but failing to hide the tension in his voice. Celine turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly under the room's blue security lights. "I take charge when it's necessary. You might find it surprising, but not everything requires control from the strongest voice. Sometimes the smartest voice is quieter." Jace opened his mouth and closed it. He had no idea what to say. He expected compliance. He expected quiet admiration. Instead, he found a presence that demanded respect simply by existing. Celine moved to a small cabinet and opened it. Inside were tools, gadgets, and small devices that Jace had never noticed before. Tiny drones, security transmitters, and holographic projectors filled the shelves. She picked up a small, glowing sphere and placed it on the table. It hummed softly, responding to her touch. "This is a sensor drone," she said, her voice casual. "It can scan the building, detect energy fluctuations, and send alerts if something unusual happens. You might want to keep one active while we sleep. It's simple, but effective." Jace swallowed hard, his mind raced. He had always thought of brides as partners in social matters, conversation, companionship, appearance. He had not considered that a bride could be this capable. "You're well prepared," he said, trying to mask his astonishment. "I didn't expect—" "Expect?" Celine asked softly, tilting her head. "Why would you? You're used to people doing as they are told." "I do things differently." Jace felt frozen. For the first time, he realized that his wealth and status meant nothing against someone who had her own knowledge, her own instincts, her own plans. Celine was not timid. She was not afraid. She was unstoppable in a quiet, calculated way. The hours passed as Celine continued her checks. She calibrated the lighting to match circadian rhythms, adjusted airflow to maximize comfort, and even interfaced with the security drones outside. Jace watched silently, sometimes wanting to intervene, sometimes afraid that his interference would be unnecessary, even foolish. Then came the moment that truly froze him. Celine walked over to the small terminal near the bed, tapped a few sequences into the interface, and the room's holographic projector came to life. A miniature 3D map of the colony appeared, showing energy nodes, patrol routes, and even hover traffic in real time. "I've integrated your security system with the local energy grid," she said calmly. "If there's an anomaly, someone approaching the property or tampering with the infrastructure, we'll know immediately. It's a simple precaution, but effective." Jace opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had expected a quiet, compliant bride who would sit politely. Instead, Celine had transformed his entire perception of what a partner could be. She noticed his expression and smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and quiet pride. "Relax," she said. "I don't mean to shock you. I just like to be ready." Jace could only nod. He realized painfully that his plans for control and predictability had been shattered in a single night. The woman before him was not going to follow him. She was going to teach him, not through words, but through action. After a moment of silence, Celine moved toward the bed. She pulled out a small device from her coat pocket, a compact holographic interface, and tapped it against the wall. A soft glow filled the room, projecting stars and constellations in perfect alignment. "This helps me sleep," she explained. "Light cycles, pattern recognition, and subtle vibration to promote rest. It's not much, but it's effective." Jace's astonishment grew. He had seen many gadgets in his life, but nothing so precise, so thoughtful, so advanced. And yet, Celine handled it with such ease, as if it were second nature. "You really planned all this?" he asked quietly, finally finding his voice. Celine turned to him, her eyes calm and unwavering. "No. I plan for what matters. The rest adapts naturally." He nodded slowly, trying to internalize the reality before him. She was not a bride in the traditional sense. She was a strategist, a thinker, a pioneer, and he had underestimated her completely. Minutes later, Celine settled on the bed, placing her devices carefully on the nightstand. She looked at Jace, her gaze steady. "You're surprised," she said. He opened his mouth to deny it, but stopped. How could he deny the truth? "I am," he admitted finally. She smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "Good," she said. "Surprise is a sign that you are learning. You'll need to learn quickly out here." Jace felt a strange mixture of pride, frustration, and admiration. For the first time, he realized that life on Draxon 9 was not going to be about domination or control. It was going to be about partnership, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for that. But Celine was. As the twin moons climbed higher in the sky, Celine closed her eyes, breathing steadily. The soft hum of her devices filled the room, and the faint glow of holographic stars created a comforting environment. Jace remained standing by the doorway watching her, frozen not by fear, but by the realization that everything he thought he knew about life, about control, and about companionship had changed. Hours passed. Jace finally moved to sit near the edge of the bed, not to assert dominance, but to observe, to understand. He asked questions about her journey, her gadgets, and her knowledge of the frontier world. Celine answered with calm precision, never condescending, never boastful, simply stating facts and offering insights. By the end of the night, Jace felt something unfamiliar. Respect. Real, deep respect for a woman who had entered his life and quietly, confidently, taken charge, not through force, but through intelligence and action. When the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, painting the room in soft pink and silver, Jace finally understood. Celine had not come to follow him. She had come to challenge him, teach him, and perhaps guide him. And for the first time in his life, Jace was ready to learn. Outside, the desert winds of Draxon, 9 whispered through the canyons, carrying hints of adventure, danger, and discovery. Inside the quarters, a silent partnership had already begun, one built on mutual respect, intelligence, and the promise of extraordinary adventures yet to come. Jace knew this was only the beginning. The frontier was wild, unpredictable, and dangerous. But with Selene by his side, quietly leading, calmly observing, and boldly acting, he felt, for the first time, that he might just survive it all, and perhaps in time learn what it truly meant to trust someone other than himself. Morning arrived slowly on Draxon 9. The twin suns rose over the desert, turning the rocky land into a sea of gold and shadow. From the balcony of the saloon, Jace Mallory looked over his town like he always had. But something inside him had changed. For the first time, he did not feel alone at the top. Behind him, Selene stood quietly, watching the movement of people and machines below. Her eyes followed energy lines only she seemed to notice. Small data screens reflected in her pupils as her bracelet softly hummed. "There's something wrong," she said calmly. Jace turned. "Wrong how?" Selene lifted her wrist, projecting a small hologram. "Energy spikes near the old mining zone. Not natural. Someone is activating dormant tech." Jace frowned. "That area's been dead for years. Nothing but broken tunnels and bad memories."
"Exactly," Selene replied.
"Which makes it perfect for people who don't want to be seen." As if summoned by her words, an explosion echoed in the distance. Dust rose like a dark cloud near the edge of town. Jace grabbed his coat. "That's the Red Comet Gang territory." "They're not just stealing ore this time," Selene said. "They're after alien tech." Within minutes, Jace's hover horses were ready. He expected Selena to stay behind, but she was already mounting one, her movements confident and controlled. "You're coming?" he asked. She looked at him calmly. "You'll need me." Jace hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "All right, lead the way." That moment mattered more than either of them realized. They rode fast across the desert, wind cutting through the air. As they approached the mining zone, Selene slowed them down and raised her hand. "Stop." Jace trusted her instinct without question now. They hid behind broken rock formations as Selene activated a small drone. It flew silently ahead, sending visuals back to her bracelet. "There are at least 12 of them," she said.
"Heavily armed, and they've already opened the vault."
Jace clenched his jaw. That vault was sealed by the first settlers. Nobody ever figured out how to open it. Selene's eyes narrowed. Someone helped them. Suddenly, alarms echoed from the vault. Blue light shot into the sky as ancient alien machinery awakened after centuries of silence. The ground shook. "The tech is unstable," Selene said. "If they don't shut it down, it could destroy half the colony." Jace looked at her. "Tell me what to do." She didn't smile. She didn't boast. She simply spoke. "I'll shut the system down." Jace raised an eyebrow. "That vault is guarded." "So are you," Selene replied. Jace rode forward openly, firing warning shots into the air. The Red Comet Gang turned, surprised. "Mallory!" one of them shouted. "You should have stayed in your town." "Bad idea to wake sleeping giants," Jace replied calmly. While their attention was on him, Selene moved through the shadows. She slipped into the vault entrance, her fingers flying across ancient controls. Symbols glowed, reacting to her touch. Inside the vault, she felt the hum of alien intelligence, old, powerful, and damaged. "Easy," she whispered. "I'm here to help." "Outside!" Jace took cover as blaster fire hit the rocks. He didn't fight recklessly. He held his ground, buying time. Selene finally cracked the system. The energy beam flickered, then faded. The ground stopped shaking. At that exact moment, Jace disarmed the last gang member. Silence fell. When Selene emerged from the vault, dust-covered but calm, Jace looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You saved the town," he said. She shook her head. "We did." Later that evening, the people of Draxon 9 gathered in the square. They didn't cheer Jace alone. They cheered both of them. As Selene stood beside him, Jace realized something powerful. He didn't feel threatened by her strength. He felt stronger because of it. And the frontier was far from finished with them. The town of Draxon 9 felt different after the vault incident. People walked with more confidence. Security drones moved smoothly through the air. The old mining zone was sealed and protected. For the first time in years, the colony felt safe. At the center of it all stood Jace and Selene, not as ruler and follower, but as partners. Inside the saloon, Jace sat at his desk while Celine reviewed data streams. They worked in silence, comfortable and focused. "You could have taken full control after what happened," Jace said suddenly. Celine looked up. "Why would I?" "You earned it," he replied. She smiled gently. "Power taken is fragile. Power shared lasts longer." Jace nodded slowly. Those words stayed with him. Days passed. Together, they upgraded the town's defenses, repaired old systems, and explored forgotten ruins beyond the desert. Wherever they went, danger followed, but so did progress. One evening, they stood on a ridge overlooking the colony. The twin suns dipped low, bathing everything in warm light. "I used to think control was everything," Jace said quietly. "That if I controlled enough, nothing could surprise me." "And now?" Celine asked. "Now I know surprise isn't weakness," he said. "It's growth." Celine looked pleased, not proud, but satisfied. A message arrived on Celine's bracelet. She studied it carefully. "What is it?" Jace asked. "Signals from deep space," she said. "Other colonies, other vaults. The frontier is waking up." Jace exhaled slowly. "So this was just the beginning?" "Yes," Celine replied. "And it will be dangerous." He smiled. "Good. I don't want easy anymore." That night the town held a celebration. Lights filled the sky. Music echoed through the streets. People laughed, not because life was perfect, but because they believed in tomorrow. Jay stood beside Celine, watching it all. "You changed my life," he said honestly. She looked at him. "You changed yourself." As the stars appeared above Draxon 9, Jace realized something important. He never wanted a silent bride. He wanted a partner who could stand beside him when the universe pushed back. And Celine, strong, calm, brilliant Celine, was exactly that. The frontier stretched endlessly beyond the desert, and together they were ready to face it.